Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on this special edition of Campus Weather Service live broadcast team. I'm Andy Moffett.
And I'm Paul Mikolajchuk.
And we wanted to give you the latest news on Hurricane Harvey. Breaking news, it has just been upgraded to a Category 4 storm with 130 mile per hour winds and a central pressure of 941 millibars. So I wanted to show you a quick rundown of some other facts we have of Hurricane Harvey. Right now we have a state of disaster in 30 Texas counties that has been issued. If you're in the area anywhere near Harvey, text shelter and your zip code to 4FEMA to find shelter. They'll text you back with relevant shelter information for your area. Also, President Trump is going to tour the damage early next week. He'll be headed down there once the storm has left the area to get a better idea of the damage. And now Paul is going to talk a little bit about the Saffir-Simpson scale.
That's right, Andy. And the Saffir-Simpson scale has 5 categories for hurricanes, the Category 1 being the lowest. And while we do have dangerous winds, it doesn't really cause too much damage to local surrounding areas. That does start to change as we up it to Category 2. More noticeable damage, usually surge also increases as well as a result of the stronger winds. And once we hit Category 3, that's really when we start to see major damage. And this is when the major hurricane threshold is reached at Category 3 and higher. Harvey is currently a Category 4, a low-end Category 4, but still a very destructive storm. And it will be set to make landfall within the next couple of hours or so. And Category 5 is the highest category on the Saffir-Simpson scale, and we are talking about widespread damage akin to that of a tornado, and nothing really can withstand a Category 5. And for more details on the track and where Harvey is going, here's Matt.
All right, thanks so much, Andy and Paul, and good evening to all of you joining us here. If you're viewing us from Texas, hopefully you're in a safe place by now because this storm is just a mere 20 miles offshore. Here's the latest information on Hurricane Harvey. Andy mentioned this now, 130 mile per hour sustained winds being measured. So that is a Category 4 strength. The pressure has been falling all day here, so the pressure is down to 941 millibars. The storm has also slowed down just a little bit now, so it's moving to the northwest at only about 8 miles per hour. Earlier today, it was moving between 10 and 12 miles per hour. And this is a look at our brand new high-res infrared satellite. If you're familiar with the new GOES-16 satellites, this is the data that we're getting from here. And this is some very high-quality information. You can see right around the eye here, just some very intense readings here. These are the very cold cloud tops that you're seeing here, and it's just a beauty on the visible satellite, a beautiful disaster at that. You can see here a very, very well-formed eye, merely just about 15 or 20 miles off the coast of Texas right now, passing just to the northeast of Corpus Christi. I can only imagine what some of the winds and rain are doing right in here. And a lot of this is spreading very far inland, so there's a lot of deep convection surrounding that. That's the sign that this hurricane is still intensifying, and this is going to be making landfall pretty shortly, probably within the next 2 to 3 hours, I'd even say, as it continues to push off to the north and west. Here's a live look at the radar from the Corpus Christi area, and we're kind of zoomed out, so it's hard to see, but you see these bright yellow and orange colors here on the western eye wall. We're seeing some very, very intense bands of rain. There likely might even be a few water spouts out here as well. We could be easily seeing 2 to 3 inch per hour rainfall rates, and these extend onto the shore here. So from just south of Corpus Christi all the way up the Texas coastline, even to Houston, we're seeing some rain bands right now. Just some very tremendous heavy rain going on at this hour. Now, we do have a lot of hurricane watches and warnings to talk about. Hurricane warnings basically extend from areas just south of Houston, including the Corpus Christi and Victoria, Texas area. These hurricane warnings go all the way into effect till Monday afternoon. So not only is this going to be a disaster from the point of view saying, you know, we see some rain, some very strong winds, but this is going to be lasting throughout this entire weekend. And even outside of the hurricane warning area, all these blue shadings right here, these are tropical storm warnings that go into effect through late Monday afternoon. And even areas as far inland as Houston, Austin, San Antonio as well could be seeing wind gusts above 35, 40 miles per hour. So even there we could see a bit of localized damage, and of course, very, very heavy rain. Now, again, just upgraded to a Category 4 storm, going to be making landfall probably within the next 2 to 3 hours, and overnight tonight it'll be just creeping onto the shoreline of Texas here with winds of about 115 miles per hour, so a little bit less intense, and of course, as it gets over the land, it will definitely start to weaken. By tomorrow afternoon, a Category 1 storm over the mainland of Texas. But the problem with this storm is it doesn't really move very far. It just kind of stays pretty stationary in the same place. Might even make a little loop around and try and head back offshore. Now, that's not really important so much the track, but the fact that this is going to be such a widespread event and it's not going to be moving very much means we're going to see a prolonged period of very strong winds and heavy rain for much of the Texas coastline. Here's a live look right now at Port Aransas here on the coast of Texas. This is right near the Corpus Christi area, just absolutely blinding heavy rain and strong winds there. As we take a look further at some of the deeper current conditions here, 76 is the temperature here in Port Aransas. Look at this, northwest wind at 41 miles per hour. Now, I do want to be honest with you, I haven't seen this really update, so the weather station here might actually have gone down because we've seen some higher wind gusts here. Could imagine these wind gusts could be in excess of 60 to even as high as 70 miles per hour. Now, here's one model projection of the rainfall that we're going to be seeing. This goes all the way through Tuesday afternoon, and we are seeing just absolutely incredible rainfall amounts. A widespread 1 to 2 feet of rain will be expected for much of the Texas coastline. Areas like Houston, this model showing about 16 inches, Galveston 21 inches, all the way down to Corpus Christi where we'll be approaching 20 inches. And right at the heart of the storm where it really just kind of meanders in this region, check this out. Victoria, Texas, this model putting out 34 inches of rain. This is unfortunately most likely going to be turning into one of the worst flood disasters we've seen in quite some time, just due to the sheer amount of rain that's going to be in this area. Now we're taking a look at wind gusts with this model graphic and just howling winds persisting through Friday night into Saturday morning. Wind gusts now right here showing in the 30s, but we were seeing through some of the model images going upwards of 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts here. Even areas far inland, you see all these pink colors here. These are wind gusts over 30 miles per hour, so damage could extend very far inland. You don't have to live right along the coast to be seeing some of this unfortunate wind damage that will be occurring. Now, I'll have more information in just a minute, but we're going to send it back to Andy and Paul at the desk with more views of the storm. Guys?
Astronomical amount of rain. So really, I hope that people are prepared to deal with the flooding in that area that most likely will be occurring shortly. We wanted to take a live look right now. We think we have a live camera in Galveston, and here we go. This is in Galveston, Texas, so a little bit north of the storm, north and east of the storm, and you can really see that camera shaking there.
That's right, Andy. You can really see the waves crashing along the pier there. Harvey is generating quite a bit of storm surge and waves in addition to all that wind and rain. And you can see the camera's really shaking quite a bit as a result of that high wind in Galveston.
And those waves looking like almost getting to the bottom of that pier. So hopefully the waves don't get much higher as we continue to approach landfall in that area, but it'll be interesting to see the progression on this camera, how that pier does, as you can see those waves crashing right up to the bottom of that pier. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other warnings that we have seen issued. I have some information printed out here about some of the pretty intense wording that has been noted in some of these warnings. So looking at the extreme wind warning that was issued for the landfalling area. Now, an extreme wind warning has only been issued once before. It's a fairly new product, and his last was issued during Hurricane Matthew in Florida. So this is only the second extreme wind warning that's ever issued, and it was issued for winds 115 to 145 miles per hour. In the warning text, they note that these extreme winds will be as if a tornado was approaching the area, so they note to take shelter immediately and find your safe room. So it'll be interesting to see how this extreme wind progresses and if they expand any of these extreme wind warnings as we go throughout the evening and overnight area. So now we're also going to look at some of the storm surge warnings that were issued. Some of these show that the current threat to life and property is extreme, and we can see as we look at this live camera, they're zooming around to find different things, and look at the waves, some very large waves that are impacting the area. Here we have a view of the traffic also, and Paul, I know we were talking about earlier that it's not good to see cars still out in the area right now.
That's right. A lot of these areas that are currently seeing tropical storm force winds will later see hurricane force winds. And there are reports actually of traffic jams taking place in Corpus Christi where they're currently gusting to hurricane strength. This is not the time to be traveling. This is the time to be taking shelter. Everyone in the hurricane warning and the extreme wind warning should have already evacuated by now. But if you have not evacuated, you need to take shelter immediately, as this is a very dangerous storm, and it is the strongest storm quite possibly to make landfall in the United States since Hurricane Charlie in August 2004.
And like I was talking about you earlier, Paul, you have an interesting tidbit about Hurricane Harvey. You were telling me you had a story from your childhood, actually, about how Hurricane Charlie impacted your traveling.
That's right. My family and myself, we were going vacation August 2004, and in South Carolina, Myrtles Beach, South Carolina, and it actually delayed our vacation while Hurricane Charlie made landfall in Florida as a Category 4. It made landfall in South Carolina as a Category 1, and that postponed our vacation plans by a few days. And that was the last Category 4 to make landfall in the United States. Hurricane Charlie, even as a Category 1 hurricane, was very damaging to the South Carolina area.
And there's also some other interesting hurricanes that we're referencing, kind of talking about this storm, some other interesting tidbits. There's Hurricane Ike, and that was the last Category, what was it, Category 3
Category
storm,
2.
Category 2 storm to make landfall in Texas. That was back in 2008, if I am correct. And so that had a 15-foot storm surge with that. So do you have any other information kind of about how, say, Ike would compare to Harvey today?
So in terms of the wind, Ike was definitely lower than Harvey. Harvey's a Category 4. Ike was a Category 2 at landfall. But in terms of sheer size, Ike was much larger than Harvey. And as a result, Ike had a much larger storm surge. All that water that got pushed up along the coast as a result of all that wind was much more severe with Ike than it will be with Harvey. Harvey will still see severe surge, but it will not meet the level that was seen with Hurricane Ike. And for further details, here's Matt.
All right, thank you very much again, guys. We're going to do one more run through to give you the latest info. Again, this is the new advisory as of 7 o'clock Central Time. Hurricane Harvey now with maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. That is a Category 4 storm here, which is a very, very powerful storm. Moving to the northwest now at about 8 miles per hour. So it's slowing down a little bit, but as you can see from this visible, the infrared satellite image here, only a few miles away from making landfall along the Texas coast. So this is going to be making landfall probably within the next 2 to 3 hours. Pressure has also been dropping all day. We're now down to 941 millibars, which is a very strong indication that the storm is strengthening. Another very good indication is all this explosive convective development around the eye here. This is called the eye wall, the most intense part of the hurricane where the strongest winds and strongest and heaviest rain are. And you can see here, there is just a very, very potent amount of heavy rain and thunderstorm activity surrounding the eye. That's a sign that it's strengthening. And again, it's only just a few miles away from making landfall here, just to the north of Corpus Christi, actually right near the Port Aransas area, where I'm going to show you a live shot in just a moment. You also notice that the eye here is starting to get a little bit darker as we head further and further into the loop. That's because these clouds here surrounding the eye are so tall that as the sun is setting across the United States now, they're casting a shadow over the eye. And the taller the clouds are, typically we like to think the stronger the thunderstorms surrounding the eye are. So again, a very strong and potent hurricane about to make landfall on the Texas coastline. This is really going to be one to remember for some time. Here's a look at the radar here, and look at this on the western edge of the eye wall right here. These bright yellows and oranges right here indicating some very, very heavy rain. Could even see a few isolated tornadoes right within that as well. Likely seeing peak wind gusts around 70, 80, 90 miles per hour. And again, this is heading right towards the Corpus Christi and Port Aransas area. Also, you see these outer bands up here. These are producing supercellular type thunderstorm, so we could see some quick spin-ups here, especially closer to the Houston area as well. Now, we do have some tropical warnings to talk about as well. Hurricane warnings extending all the way from just south of Houston down the coastline into Corpus Christi and points just south of Corpus Christi. Just off the coastline here of Brownsville, we have a hurricane watch in effect, where we will be anticipating some hurricane conditions there. And then outside of the hurricane warning, this all blue shade color on the mainland of Texas. These are tropical storm warnings, so we could even be seeing winds as high as 30, 40, or 50 miles per hour very far inland. Houston, Austin, San Antonio, all included in this threat. So this will not only be a very damaging storm for the coast, but we'll also see plenty of rain and wind, especially heading very far inland. Now, again, here, let's take a look at one more look at the track here. Category 4 storm now about to make landfall, and I'd say the next 2 or 3 hours. And as it pushes onto the coast overnight tonight, weakens a little bit, and then we are going to see that gradually move up towards just inland of the Corpus Christi area by tomorrow afternoon. And then it's going to basically stall and do a little very slow loop here in coastal Texas. So what that's going to do is, even though the storm will definitely weaken some as it makes this loop by Monday afternoon, only a weaker tropical storm, but it'll still be producing plenty of rain and very strong wind gusts for the coastline. Now we're going to take a look at the radar one more time. Let's get a closer look here now as my producer Noah is zooming in for us right here. So again, some very strong bands of rain right here, these reds right here, indicating very, very, very strong to very torrential downpours in here. You notice this little marker here, that's the reflectivity intensity. Basically, when we have a lot of particles falling from the sky, the radar beam shoots out and starts to detect just how frequent and strong these particles are. So the higher DBZ values, as Noah is pointing to with this arrow right here in these orange and red areas, that's the heavier rainfall we're seeing on the graphic. Also notice this very wide and tight circulation here that extends all the way into inland, easily 50 miles inland. We're seeing likely tropical storm force winds with that. And you notice here, like as we start to, actually we're going to take a look at the velocity product here. Very, very strong winds here denoted by these more purple colors here, and these, I guess we call them like pinkish orange colors here. Likely seeing winds being detected by the radar between 100 and 130 miles per hour. Here's one sampling right here, 128 miles per hour. This area that's kind of just over the water right here, this is more of the eye, so there's a lot lighter winds being detected in there. But again, either side of the eye, right along the eye wall right here, seeing some very, very strong to damaging winds here. Of course, this is over open water now, but you know, coastal communities right in here could very well be seeing some very powerful winds coming straight off of the ocean here. You notice these pink colors here, likely denoting winds being detected by the radar of around 100 miles per hour. Here's one sampling right here, 107 miles per hour being detected right, it looks like right on shore right here. So very, very damaging stuff here. I really do hope that people who live right along the coastal areas of Rockport and Port Aransas have evacuated, because this is absolutely unbelievable here. Again, one more look at the radar showing just how incredible these bands of rain are rotating in off of the ocean here as this continues to push off to the north and west. This is going to be making landfall quite soon as we head into the evening hours. And again, places like Rockport, Port Aransas, Corpus Christi could see some extreme devastation. Now we're going to send it back to the desk one last time with Andy and Paul.
Thank you, Matt, and that radar demonstration was really great. I wanted to answer one quick question we had on Facebook. Dusty Thacker had a question about the storm surge forecast, and I can look at the warning here, and it looks like we'll have 6 to 9, maybe even some more feet of storm surge. It depends exactly on your location and the direction that your beach is facing. But in general, it's going to be a significant amount of storm surge expected in that area.
That's right, and areas just to the northeast of the storm are expected to see the worst storm surge. And as Matt was showing, those pinks on the radar really indicate where the worst storm surge is going to be. And we can see some of that storm surge on our live feed right now with the really shaking camera as a result of all that wind. You can see the waves crashing onto the pier as well still. The storm surge is only going to get worse from here as Harvey churns to the northwest.
We're going to take a quick break for right now, and we'll be back a little bit later with some more information. But for now, we're going to leave that live camera up for you to be able to see live progress and live conditions in Galveston, Texas as we take our break. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us as we continue our live coverage of Hurricane Harvey as it's impacting the Texas coast this afternoon. Once again, I'm Andy Moffett.
And I'm Paul Mikolajchuk.
And we wanted to go right now into some interesting historical information regarding Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey, if it makes landfall as a Category 4 storm, would be only the 21st known Category 4 storm to make landfall in the United States.
That's right, and in addition, it would also be the first major hurricane to make landfall since Hurricane Wilma, and we've been on a 4,323-day streak without a major hurricane making landfall in the United States. So this is a considerable amount of time since a major hurricane has made landfall. If it makes landfall as a Category 4, that would be the first time since Hurricane Charlie back on August 13th, 2004, that it made landfall as a category, that a storm would make landfall in the United States as a Category 4.
And there's also been a few other pretty devastating storms to impact the Texas coastline. And like you said, it's been a while since those have occurred.
That's right, and the last Category 4 to hit Texas was actually Hurricane Brett back in 1999. And that was a very destructive storm. However, it hit a very unpopulated area, and if Harvey remains on its current path, the worst winds may actually hit a very unpopulated area like Brett.
All right. Well, we really hope that Harvey does weaken a little bit before landfall, but for some current information about the strength and the exact track that Harvey is supposed to take, we're going to go over to Noah Berggren on the map wall.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So Hurricane Harvey, I won't say Matthew. I've been mistaking that here in the studio for the past couple of minutes. Hurricane Harvey is now a Category 4 hurricane, as Andy and Paul have mentioned. Again, thanks for sticking with us here on the Campus Weather Service live page. If you've got any family or friends down in the Texas area, if you've got any photos, or even if you're watching us from down there, please, if you're safely able to, send us any photos or videos you have by tagging hashtag PSU Weather on social media. So let's get right to it. Here's the current stats as of 7:59 p.m. We've got a storm which is just off the coast of Texas right here. The coordinates are there and the movement is northwest at 8 miles per hour. This is probably one of the biggest things that's going to make the storm very severe across Texas, is that the storm is moving very slowly, and this storm does not have many steering currents in the area, which is why we're worried about the extreme threat for flash flooding and prolonged storm effects over the next couple days. Now here is a live look at the high-resolution, improved and new GOES-16 satellite. Now you notice that the satellite is beginning to get darker and dimmer across the eastern half of the storm. What this is actually is the sun that's beginning to set on the other side of the Earth. And so this satellite's not going to last for much longer because we need sunlight to see this GOES-16 imagery. But I want you to take a look here and see all of these ripples right along the eye. This is very deep, what we call convection in meteorology. Extreme upward lift, which creates these bands of rain and very strong winds in and around the eye. You could even see all the way down into the eye right now currently. And this storm is going to be making landfall somewhere to the north of Corpus Christi. The good news is that in between Corpus Christi and, I don't know if any of you remember what the other city up north of Corpus Christi is not particularly as habitable, or not habitable. It's not as populated as some other areas along the coast. So this storm, if there's any good news, is that it's not going to make landfall directly in Corpus Christi sometime in the next few hours. Live Doppler radar here. This is the radar site coming out of, I believe, Corpus Christi, Texas. And this is just an incredible display of meteorology if you're a weather weenie or a meteorologist. But in all seriousness, this is a very dangerous situation and a very strong storm to be taken very seriously. You can see the streamlines here, these white lines moving counterclockwise into the center of circulation of the storm. We'll pull in and take a little bit of a closer look. You see, here's the rain bands and the structure of a hurricane. So the storm is rotating counterclockwise as it moves north and west very slowly into the coast of Texas. Now, you're probably looking at this radar saying, why is there not as much reflectivity on the eastern side of the storm? That is because the western eye wall of this storm is so strong, the radar beam is having a tough time making it through the eye wall to the other side. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take a live three-dimensional look at this storm. This is brand new weather data and graphics that we've got here at Penn State over the summer. What this is going to enable us to do is take a live three-dimensional look. All these colors here are reflectivity. So what do I mean reflectivity? Reflectivity is the amount and the intensity of precipitation that is falling within this storm. And this is pretty obvious and really clear and awesome to see. You see the entire eye here of the storm of Hurricane Harvey. And Matt, my weather graphics producer, if we could turn this a little bit and zoom it out so we could see how this kind of looks like a grandstand. If any of you ever been to a football game or any to a large stadium, you know how a grandstand or a stadium is flat at the bottom, like where, say, a football field would be flat at the bottom and the sides gradually come up on either side. This is what we call the grandstand effect. And this is very telling of a well-developed and mature hurricane approaching the coast. Just take a look at this. Just unbelievable imagery we're seeing here. You can see where the strongest rain bands are coming into the coast right now, and a really well-defined eye wall. This storm continues to intensify as it moves closer to the coast. Now what you're looking at is the velocity scan. So what this is the Doppler radar sends the beam out, and it's instead of looking at precipitation, the radar is detecting winds in the atmosphere. So the colors on this side of the storm, right in here with the purple shadings, if we can go ahead and query one of those points, I'll let you know that the winds right here now are beginning here 136 miles per hour right off the coast. So there is very strong winds indicated by Doppler radar, and these winds are continuing to move onto shore over the next 1 to 3 hours. So the worst of the storm has not yet made it to the Texas coast, although it is rapidly, or not rapidly, it is rapidly strengthening, but the storm is slowly moving towards the coast. Now we're going to show you more of our new very special Doppler radar products. This is very scientific, but I'll do my best here to give you a good explanation of it. This is called the correlation coefficient map. And what you're looking at here of the colors ranging from dark red all the way down to blue is that the radar is discerning between different types of objects in the atmosphere. So all of this right here where the radar is red, this is all objects of the same size and shape, similar shape and size, excuse me. So this is where all of the rain is. And inside the eye wall where you see the blue and the lighter colors, the radar is detecting objects that are dissimilar. So actually what this is, I know I'm really geeking out here for you getting into a science lesson, but what the radar is picking up is actually a whole flock of birds and seagulls which is stuck and trapped inside the eye wall of Hurricane Harvey because they were out at sea when the storm formed and continued to strengthen. So the radar is picking up varying different sizes and shapes of objects, which actually are birds that are caught in the eye of the hurricane as it moves towards the coast. The current watches and warnings here, we've got a tropical storm warning for the outermost edges of the storm, the more populated area of Houston, and a tropical storm warning through tomorrow, or Monday afternoon. Where you see this light magenta and orange shading, we have a hurricane warning that is currently in effect for very strong wind gusts, well over 100 miles per hour possible. The potential for flash flooding, possibly well over 20 inches, and some storm surge as well. Now, if you're wondering, the storm surge from this is going to be very strong. Now, the reason for the high risk of flooding and storm surge is because as this storm slows down as it enters the coast, if we can go back to the radar here real quick, I'll explain to you why we're looking at such a flash flooding risk. So the storm is strengthening. Again, as I mentioned, if you're just joining us, Hurricane Harvey is a Category 4 storm, and the storm is only moving at about 10 miles per hour to the north and west. And one of the many reasons why we're worried about flash flooding and extreme widespread flooding from this storm is because the winds from this storm are going onshore, and as the rain bands from this storm dump rain across inland portions of the coast, naturally the water that falls is trying to go back out into the ocean, but the storm is slowly pushing all of this back. So that's why coastal communities here from Rockport down to Corpus Christi and anywhere along this coast are very concerned for life-threatening flash flooding over the next couple of days. If we can go forward here, I'll click through some of these graphics, and I believe I can show you the flooding potential here right after the weather alerts. If I can move forward, here we go. Here's the official National Hurricane Center track for Hurricane Harvey. Currently, again, as I mentioned, a Category 4 storm on the Saffir-Simpson scale. Now, by later this evening, 1 o'clock in the morning, the storm will have just made landfall on the Texas coast, so it will begin to weaken. Although typically when tropical cyclones move into land, they weaken quickly. However, that's not going to be the case with Hurricane Harvey because it's moving so slowly. Part of the storm is actually going to still be over the water. So this storm is not going to hit the coast and then immediately weaken, which is another reason why we're worried for prolonged gusty winds and flash flooding in widespread areas here across southeastern Texas. Through the day Saturday, you can see the storm really doesn't move much. It weakens, though, from a Category 4 storm to a Category 1. By that time, the winds are no longer the primary threat, and it becomes a flash flooding potential. You can see here, I've advanced this all the way till next Monday, and the storm is still within the same 100-mile area. So anywhere within this storm cone right here, you can see potential for well over 20 inches of rain from this storm. Here's a live camera from Port Arkansas, which is in southeastern Texas. You can see the rain pouring down on the highway, very low visibility, and the winds are gusting well over 50 miles per hour. I'll advance this forward here, and I can give you a little bit more details. Actually, the wind is calm. I'm not sure this weather graphic is pulling the right data, but I assure you that the wind is much stronger than calm there right now. Putting the maps into motion here, here's future weather. Now, this is the biggest threat I think we can say from this storm is the potential for life-threatening rainfall. Just take a look at this. This is just unheard of. You don't see model projections of 36 inches of rain in the next couple of days, which is why all meteorologists and news outlets have been warning the folks in the communities of southeastern Texas to seek safe shelter. Galveston, Texas, 22 inches of rain projected on this one model. You can see anywhere within this yellow contour, there was the potential for 20 to 35 inches of rain. Actually, I would not be surprised to see some areas in here maybe approach 40 inches of rain in the next couple of days. So definitely we want to send thoughts and prayers to those down in southeastern Texas. And then all of this rain is going to gradually move off to the north and east over the next couple of days, but that will be a very slow process. Future weather showing us the projected wind gusts from this storm. This is the NAM computer model showing the wind gusts continuing to be over 50 miles per hour, even down to the south and the north of the storm through the night tonight. Could be some wind gusts over 100 miles per hour right near Corpus Christi in Victoria, Texas. As we get through the day tomorrow, though, the wind gusts will begin to weaken and the flash flooding threat will continue, though. And I'll send it back to Andy and Paul with some more details on the history of tropical storms and also any damage reports we're getting from the Texas area. Guys, back over to you.
Thank you, Noah. Point regarding that live camera you brought up, I was looking up some information during that break when you were speaking, and Aransas Pass, which is actually in the area of that live camera, within the past hour had sustained winds of 74 miles per hour and had a gust of 96 miles per hour. So likely that calm reading on that forecast graphic right there was incorrect. That station probably has failed at this point. So definitely very windy out there right now.
That's right, and Harvey once again has maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. I should note, though, that Hurricane Brett back in 1999 was actually a Category 3 when it made landfall in Texas. It was the last Category 3 or higher storm to make landfall in Texas. The last Category 4 storm was actually Hurricane Carla back in 1961. So this part of Texas really has not seen this kind of conditions in quite some time.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to try now to go to a live camera located in Galveston, and we'll see if this live camera is up currently right now, and it looks like it is. Wow. Definitely looks rainy and windy out there right now. Can't see much. Definitely looks like water on the road even right there, and you can see people walking on the beach. Not a smart idea right now, Paul.
Yeah, the storm surge is really getting itself together, as you can see in the live camera there. The waves are also much higher than usual as a result of Hurricane Harvey progressing to the northwest, and lots of beach erosion to be expected.
And you can see those palm trees right there all bending over, the palm fronds there leaning to the right. So definitely a very windy scenario right now, and those waves look to be approaching the road. So definitely stay out of the area if you are there. Leave the area. It's not a safe place to be in the next coming hours and even days with the associated rainfall they're going to get there.
And in areas especially that are under hurricane wind warnings or extreme wind warnings, the National Weather Service is very clear that areas in that extreme wind warning could be uninhabitable for days or even months.
Right, I have the text of the extreme wind warning here, and it says that the winds in the path of this hurricane could reach 115 to 145 miles an hour. That could produce swaths of tornado-like damage. It says, take cover now. Treat these imminent extreme winds as if a tornado was approaching your area and move to the safe room in your shelter immediately. So definitely a very dangerous situation if you're in the path of this eye. And even like Noah was mentioning with the extreme rainfall, I've seen some model projections upwards of 50 inches of rain. Now, hopefully we get on the lower end of that, hopefully is only probably 2 feet still. So definitely lots of rain is going to be falling in that area.
And those low model projections are really only about 20 inches of rain, and that's a lot of rain still. That's a considerable amount of rain. Harvey is here to stay, unfortunately, in southeast Texas, and will be still lingering over the area over the next several days. Even if it's only a tropical storm with winds not very high, we still will be talking about the threat for very high rainfall amounts, prolonged rainfall amounts, over the next week or so.
And I know you were talking, Paul, you had a new report of a recon aircraft that came in with a slightly lower pressure than what it was. So that shows that the storm is continuing to strengthen.
So we have a lot of indicators the storm is still strengthening. We have very tall clouds over that's surrounding the center of the storm, and that's usually indicative of strengthening. In addition, recon was finding pressure fell about 1 or 2 millibars lower than what it was the previous time they decided to sample the eye.
So storm is continuing to strengthen, and for more detail on how much it's going to strengthen and how close we actually are to landfall, we're going to head back over to the map wall with Noah. Noah?
Yeah, thanks, guys. This is truly an incredible storm and also a very life-threatening and serious storm. Actually, I'm going to request Brian, our control room operator, if we could switch over and throw the live camera up right over me real quick. I'm going to talk over and explain. I found a tweet online that this particular camera, guys, that we're looking at right here in Port Arkansas, just measured a sustained wind of 81 miles per hour with a wind gust to 103 miles per hour. This is actually this particular camera right here. I am just reading from the National Weather Service in Corpus Christi, had a wind gust to 103 miles per hour. And the eye of this storm, the worst of the weather, is still about 35 miles to the south and east off the coast of Texas. We see that now here on the live GOES visible satellite. Actually, we'll go over some headlines here real quick. So the state of Texas is a disaster area in 30 Texas counties. And if you've got any friends or family down there, if you're watching, if you're sharing this stream, or even if you're near the area down there and you're hearing this, you can tell people to text the word shelter in your zip code to 4 FEMA on your phone to find shelter in southeastern Texas. And also the President of the United States will be going to tour any damage, which there will be lots of it, unfortunately, from this storm early next week in the wake of Hurricane Harvey. Now, currently, right up to the minute, if you're just joining us, it is now 8:15 here Eastern Time. Hurricane Harvey has a minimum central pressure of 941 millibars, which gives it the equivalent of a Category 4 storm. A big thing I want you to notice is that the storm is only moving to the northwest at 8 miles per hour. Typically, when we have tropical cyclones of this strength, sometimes they could very easily move 30, 40 miles per hour. But this storm, there was very weak stirring currents aloft in the atmosphere. What does that mean, you ask? So the storm is not getting much in the way of a push either in any direction in the upper levels of the atmosphere. So that's why the storm is kind of slowing down into the coast, which really doesn't happen often. Not to this extent that Hurricane Harvey is. And as the sun is beginning to set here on our GOES satellite, I want you to take a look at this. This is really, truly an incredible display. As the sun is setting to the east, the sunlight that's making it onto Harvey is just enhancing what is going to be a devastating night for coastal communities here. The sunlight is actually enhancing some of the tall cloud towers, what we call them here. So the convection is so strong right here that as the sun sets, you can see little shadows coming from all these very tall and deep clouds here right along this eye wall. Just a truly remarkable display of meteorology and Mother Nature. Unfortunately, for all of those communities down there, we keep our thoughts and prayers with them tonight as this very strong storm approaches the coast. We'll now look live at our Doppler radar here. My graphics operator, Matt, If we can go take a closer scan, of Hurricane Harvey. Before we go into three-dimensional mode, I want you to notice how the storm, you see the little streamlines here, the outline, the contours of white are swirling into the storm counterclockwise. So storms, low pressure in the northern hemisphere, this storm is rotating counterclockwise as it moves towards the coastline of Texas. The eye wall at last check, so that's this area right in here where there's a lot less precipitation. The eye wall, typically very calm of a hurricane, is about 35 miles to the south and east of the nearest point on the Texas coastline. So as we go through the next couple of hours, we are nearing a landfall of Hurricane Harvey. And if we draw a three-dimensional scan here, let's just leave it right there. Just take a look at this. This is unbelievable imagery on our brand new graphic system we got here at the Penn State Department of Meteorology this summer. This is actually a perfect representation of what we call the grandstand effect in meteorology. So the storm is a well-developed tropical cyclone, and what's happening is that the storm is so symmetric outside of the eye wall that if you've ever been to a major NFL game or a soccer stadium or a college football stadium, Beaver Stadium, for instance, you know that down, say, with the field level, so the surface right here is flat, and then the sides of the stadium come up gently and gradually on the outer edges of the storm. And that is exactly textbook what this storm is showing us right here, right now. So it's just another one of the many indicators that this storm is rapidly strengthening, and unfortunately, a major hurricane, once again, of Category 4 strength. If we can turn this around a little bit and zoom out, I want to give you a look closer at where this storm is. So if we can turn this a little bit so we're facing the coast, I'll show you that the eye wall is still a little bit off the coast. See just how wide it is. And actually, as the storm moves inland, if you're wondering, there may be some precipitation in the eye wall, but typically the eye wall of a tropical cyclone is very calm. There's no rain, there's no wind. The sun might even come out, although it's beginning to set there. And you see here the strongest storm band currently here moving towards Port Arkansas, where we just had a wind gust to 103 miles per hour. The extremely heavy rain falling from this storm. And also, as with any tropical cyclone of this strength, there is the potential for, there is the potential for brief spin-up tornadoes due to the extreme nature of the uplift in the atmosphere. So anywhere within these bands that are pivoting onto the coast, there can be a tornado spin-up as well. If we click on this one particular point right here on the northern part of the storm, you can see that the velocity, the negative sign doesn't mean that the wind is negative. What the negative sign here means that the wind is blowing away from the radar site at 130 miles per hour. So just off the Texas coastline, there was very strong winds. So the strongest of the winds still have not made it onto the Texas coastline. And you see here where I mentioned again in the eye wall, perfect example. The wind is calm in the eye wall and very strong right across the northern and southern edges of the storm currently. So if we keep advancing here forward, I'll let you take a look at a map, what we call correlation coefficient. Now, the professors and all of my friends here at school will be very happy I'm showing you this because we all know about this as meteorologists, but you're probably sitting there saying, what on earth is correlation coefficient? So what this is this map is displaying the radar beam going out from the site, and what it's doing, this is not precipitation, don't be confused. This is not rain, this is not snow. This particular map is discerning different objects of shapes and sizes in the atmosphere. So where you see all of the same colors of red and warmer colors, you see that means similar. So lots of rain, things of the same shape and size. I can't speak, excuse me. But here in the eye wall, see how there's these blue and cooler colors? That means dissimilar objects are being picked up by the radar. And it's something really cool, actually, that is some birds that are caught in the eye wall of this very intense storm moving onto shore right now. So little cool fact, there's a whole bunch of birds caught in the eye wall of this storm as Hurricane Harvey approaches the coast. Up to the minute weather alerts if you're just joining us. If you just clicked on here on Facebook, Hurricane Harvey is a Category 4 storm. We've got weather alerts issued for pretty much all of the Texas coastline. Anywhere you see these outlines of orange is hurricane warnings, which remain in effect through the day on Monday. Anywhere shaded in blue, so the more wider known areas of southern Texas, the Houston area, not going to get much in the way of damaging winds. They'll get winds in Houston, maybe over 50 miles per hour, but the core of the strongest winds will be right in here where you see the outlines of orange. So lots of rain from this storm as it heads into the coastline. And I'll show you the official National Hurricane Center track here. Again, as I mentioned, this storm is doing something that's not typically common with tropical cyclones. It's actually slowing down as it gets into the coast. And you'll see here, I'll start this forward here with this evening. Category 4 storm, as I mentioned. By Saturday at 1 p.m., the storm moves only a few miles inland. Although it weakens to a Category 1 storm, do not be fooled. The winds may weaken, although the rain and flooding threat will continue from Hurricane Matthew across southeastern Texas. And through early next week, through this weekend and early next week, Matthew's actually going to perform a loop, and the center of circulation may actually come right back out over the water again. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Hurricane Harvey re-strengthens as it comes back over the coast, and then eventually, maybe later next week, as the jet stream, which is way off to the north, moves south, we'll try to pick all of this up and move it off to the north and east and give some reprieve to those communities in southern Texas. Here's another live look at Port Aransas, which, if you just joined us, this particular camera where it's located had a wind gust to 103 miles per hour. So not the strongest of winds yet, as I mentioned. They're still offshore, but very incredible display of weather. You see the rain pouring down here, the very low visibility. It doesn't look like the power's on with the stoplights there, or the street poles on the highway. Now switching to our maps in motion here over the next couple of days. This is one particular computer model, and the colors, no, this is not snow. This is not 36 inches of snow. This is 36 inches of rain in Victoria, Texas. 22 inches of rain in Galveston, Texas. This is not over the whole year. This is through, you see the timestamp up here, Tuesday, 8 o'clock. So only in the next 3 or 4 days, portions of southeastern Texas, 20 to 40 inches of rain, which is just unheard of for one storm in this such a short period of time. So it is safe to say that the biggest threat from Hurricane Matthew is the potential for life-threatening rains as the storm continues to stay near the southeastern coast of Texas. Here with the winds through Hurricane Harvey, anywhere you see these shades of pink and purple, there is the potential for wind gusts well over 60 miles per hour. Anywhere in here, they could exceed 100 miles per hour. But again, as I mentioned, as the center of the storm moves inland, the winds will weaken, but the potential for very heavy rain will continue through the next couple of days. So once again, if you just joined us, before I send it back to Andy and Paul, we'll look at the weather headlines, a couple of things we pulled up here. A state of disaster has been declared in 30 Texas counties. If you know anybody down there, if you got friends or family, you can text the word shelter and your zip code to 4FEMA to find shelter. And also, the President of the United States will be visiting Texas sometime next week to go on a damage tour of what Hurricane Harvey left in its path. So unfortunately, a very dangerous situation ongoing in southeastern Texas. All of our thoughts and prayers are with the communities down there, and it looks like the worst of the conditions will be moving on shore here shortly in the next hour or two. I'll send it back now to Andy and Paul with more details on what we're expecting going forward.
Some great information about the winds, and I love that tidbit about the birds trapped in the eye of Hurricane Harvey. We wanted to take one more quick look at that live camera we had in Galveston, Texas, if it is still up right now. It looks like it is up right now. Definitely looks like conditions rapidly deteriorating there, Paul.
Probably a rain band over the Galveston area, and as we were just looking at the visible satellite, it does look like as if the northern part of the eye wall is working its way closer and closer to the Texas coastline, and it'll probably be over most of mainland Texas within the next couple of hours or so.
And it does look like still plenty of cars driving around in that area, and that might be a light on in the distance, so not sure if they still have power there or not, but definitely not a ideal situation at all in Galveston. So for right now, it looks like we'll be taking another quick break, one last break. We'll come back with another short final wrap-up of information and relevant information about Hurricane Harvey. We'll give you a latest rundown on all of the warnings and advisories that have been issued. But for now, I'm Andy Moffett.
And I'm Paul Mikolajchuk.
And we'll be back shortly. Thank you.
Hello, thanks for sticking with us here on our live Penn State Campus Weather Service storm coverage of Hurricane Harvey, which is continuing to strengthen and approach the southeastern coast of Texas. This is the GOES-16 visible satellite, and this satellite, you can't see it anymore because the sun is setting in the west, so the sunlight is no longer casting through the atmosphere. So this satellite image is not going to be good in a couple more minutes. But you can just take a look and notice the unbelievable display of meteorology here. You can see the intense convection right around the eye and the eye wall of the hurricane, approaching just to the north and east of Corpus Christi now. The current time is about 14 minutes till 9 o'clock. So I would expect a landfall probably within the next 1 to 2 hours at this current rate. Andy, how close was this to the coast again? You said about 18 miles just off to the coastline. So this storm is going to be making an official landfall somewhere to the north of Corpus Christi, probably within the 9 o'clock hour. Hopefully, I can bring that to you live when we're still on the air. Live Doppler radar here across southern Texas. You see, if we can zoom in a little bit here on the radar, Brian, my graphics operator, is going to zoom us in here a little bit. Take a little bit of a closer look here. You can see, just zooming in with the camera view, you can just click, there you go. If we could close out of this and just go back to the reflectivity, I'll show you the extreme rain bands that are circulating around Hurricane Matthew as this Category 4 storm continues. Here we go. So you see the well-defined eye and the associated eye wall of the storm here. Here's Rockport and Port Aransas, where we actually had a report of a wind gust to 103 miles per hour right before we came on the air. If we could just leave it right here for 1 second. Actually, you see this little spinning red icon. That is our computer graphics telling us the potential for a tornado within this strong band of weather here with Hurricane Harvey. That is a common thing with tropical cyclones, the potential for spin-ups of tornadoes as the storm comes ashore. Right here, actually in the eye, there is not much weather occurring. It is pretty calm in the eye of a hurricane. The winds the winds very sharply diminish to practically nothing. The sun, if the sun was still up, the sun actually sometimes comes out in the eye. But the worst of the weather right now, if you're just joining us, looks to be just moving on north of Port Aransas along the coast here, right in this very dark shade of red here on the outermost eye wall. And if we can go take a three-dimensional scan of this storm right across the eye wall, I'll show you the remarkable structure of Hurricane Harvey. I'll just take a look at this. If we can move this up a little bit, we'll look down into Hurricane Harvey. This is what we call the grandstand effect. So if you've ever been to a big stadium, even the Penn State game is a perfect example. Beaver Stadium is flat on the field. Comparing this to Beaver Stadium, stick with me here. If the field is flat and the seats come up slowly and gradually on the outsides, this is what this storm is displaying. Structure-wise, we call the grandstand effect once again, indicative of a very mature and very strong tropical cyclone. You can see all the way down into the eye wall here. It's very remarkable here on the 3D scan. I'll continue forward here, and I'll show you our more Doppler radar products. If we go forward here, I'll show you we have some very heavy rain and some very, very strong winds now moving onto the southeastern coast of Texas. If we could zoom in right here, right off the coast of Rockport, you see these purple, pink, and magenta, hot pink colors, if you will, here. If we can click a query on one of these pixels, I believe that the wind speed here in any of these cells is well over 100 miles per hour. I'm willing to guess that any of this is winds gusting over 110 miles per hour. It's the middle query right there on the lower bar. Towards your right, it's okay. So this is winds moving towards the shore. This is winds moving counterclockwise around the storm. So the wind is blowing all of the water into the coastline and across the rest of the storm. Right below the bar on the second row is the query for winds. You'll see it's the third one in to the left. So the winds, again, as I mentioned, are blowing very strong into the coast, well over 100 miles per hour. And as we go forward here, I'll show you another one of our graphics. This is what we call the correlation coefficient map. And no, do not confuse this with wintertime maps. You're not looking at snow. You're not looking at hail. What this particular radar product is doing is it's discerning between different shapes and sizes of objects in the atmosphere. So where you see all of the red and similar colored shading here across the outer portion of the storm, that is things that are falling of the same shape and size. Inside the wall here, here's the eye wall of the storm, and inside, in the eye of the hurricane, you see the color bar up here associates with dissimilar objects. So what does that mean, you're asking? Actually, there is birds being reported in the eye of this storm as it moves inland, starts to come inland over the southeastern Texas coast this evening. Weather alerts currently, we've got a tropical storm warning in effect for areas off to the north, central, and very southern Texas near Brownsville. Anywhere here in the light orange and red shading is where we have a hurricane warning in effect through the day on Monday for the very strong winds and the potential for life-threatening rains from this storm. If you have any questions here, I'm seeing people commenting on our Facebook page. We'll be very happy to answer them. If you have any comments or storm reports you see, we'll go over them. Here, going forward, though, playing the storm track of Harvey. Here's Saturday at 1 o'clock in the morning. The storm should have made landfall by that time. And notice how slowly this storm treks over southeastern Texas. Here's through the day Saturday and Sunday. Heading into the day on Monday, the storm may actually do a loop, come back out over the water, and actually it may re-strengthen if the center of the storm can come back over the ocean here on Monday. And now we'll take a live look at Port Arkansas, which when I was discussing the velocity before, I mentioned this area had a recorded wind gust to 103 miles per hour. We're starting to get some damage out of this area, report of some shingles and portions of a roof coming off of homes and businesses. Taking a look at the rainfall potential from this storm. Truly incredible stuff here. No, this is not snow I'm showing you, and this is through Tuesday evening here. I'll stop the clock at 8:30 Tuesday. So just the next couple of days, anywhere where you see the yellow shading here, inside of there, that is the potential for 20 to 30, maybe even some areas in 1 or 2 towns, 40 inches of rain. You see this particular model is printing out 36.27 inches of rain in Victoria, Texas. So definitely the biggest threat from this storm looks to be the potential for life-threatening floods over the next couple of days. Wind gusts from this storm, the winds will kind of gradually taper off with this storm as it moves inland. They won't, typically when a hurricane or a tropical cyclone hits land, it weakens very fast. But because this storm is going to be partially still over the water, the winds are going to still keep going through the day tomorrow, although the winds will gradually come down as the storm moves inland. The flash flood threat will continue, though, through the next day. Putting this all together here before I wrap it up, I'll send it back to Andy and Paul. State of disaster has been declared in 30 Texas counties. If you know of anybody down there, if you got any friends or family, anybody you're in contact with, they can text the word shelter and their zip code to 4FEMA to find shelter in portions of Texas. Hopefully by now, though, everyone down there is in their safe place and continues to remain safe. And also it was announced that the President of the United States will be making the journey to southern Texas sometime next week to see the storm damage from what is going to be an unprecedented hurricane striking portions of Texas. And one other thing for you, it has been 4,323 days since a major hurricane has struck the United States. So this is breaking quite a drought in terms of hurricanes here in the United States. For more information, I'll send it back to Andy and Paul now at the desk.
Thank you for that information, Noah. And like you just discussed, and like Paul and I had been discussing, it has been an interesting history regarding hurricanes in the United States. What types of hurricanes are people kind of comparing, if that lack for a better word, Harvey to?
Some of the storms that we have seen impact Texas over the last 50 years or so have been, one particular storm was Hurricane Ike. Back in 2008, Ike was a Category 2 at landfall with winds of 110 miles per hour. Ike was a much bigger storm than Harvey, though, so much larger storm surge compared to Harvey. But Ike was lower in the wind department compared to Harvey. We've also seen comparisons to Hurricane Brett, as Harvey might be making landfall in a relatively unpopulated area, and Brett made landfall as a Category 3 in 1999. We've also seen comparisons to Hurricane Carla back in 1961, where winds were of Category 4 strength.
Definitely very interesting to compare it to these various storms. And we're going to now try to go to a live shot located in Galveston, and this is that live image right now. Still power in that area, Paul. We can see there with those street lights activated and lots of vehicles out there right now. Definitely people should be in their safe places taking shelter and not be out on the roads right now.
That's right, and Galveston is not going to see the worst wind impacts from Harvey. But certainly a lot of rain is on the way there, and you can see the surge there as well, and the waves are definitely making a very unpleasant picture for any kind of beach-going conditions.
Definitely. And right now, actually, we're going to go back to our map wall. We have Brian Mastro now standing by to discuss more information about Hurricane Harvey and what to expect as we go forward and how close we actually are to landfall. So, Brian?
Thanks, guys. Right now, we're looking at the latest information in from the National Hurricane Center. This advisory was put out at about 8 p.m. We're expecting another advisory here within the next few minutes. So if there's any new information, I hope somebody stops me and gives me that new information. But as of 8 p.m., the winds were 130 miles per hour, which makes it a Category 4 storm, which is a major hurricane. The threshold, of course, for major hurricane is Category 3. And people have been throwing around that 4,323 number, the amount of days it's been since a major hurricane hit the United States. That was Hurricane Wilma back on October 24th, 2005. So it's been nearly 12 years since a major hurricane has made landfall in the United States. Hurricane Harvey is getting close to doing that. If you look here, even on the satellite, you can see that eye is almost just about to those barrier islands just off the Texas coast. It's moving at 8 miles an hour to the northwest, and it's a little less than, it's around 15 miles away from the shoreline or so. So we will be getting landfall here within the next couple hours, and pressure is down to 941 millibars at this hour as well. Going forward, looking at our visible satellite, like we just saw, it is getting dark out, so we're going to be losing this visible satellite very soon, but you do see these last few frames before it does get dark over there. You do see that very clear eye moving towards the coast. It's probably just offshore that coastline right now. And you can see some of these very high clouds, some of these towering clouds that make up the eye wall as it is getting closer and closer to the coast. So right now, the worst of the storm is just about or already onshore in areas just to the north of Corpus Christi. So we hope that everyone is either in their shelter or is hopefully just staying out of harm's way, staying indoors, out of the elements, because this is a very dangerous situation going on in Texas right now. Looking at our radar, we do see that eye once again showing up very clearly on the radar as well. You see right in there all that kind of, it's still a little bit of green, but that could be attributed to radar error as well, because it's much calmer in the eye. You see that sharp cutoff right there. That's where the eye wall ends and the eye begins. And you see all these heavy rain bands. They're coming onshore right now as we speak. They're coming onshore just by Rockport. And you see here, this is all that flow. All of this water is being pushed onshore by Harvey right now. A very dangerous situation developing right now on the Texas coast. This is going to be the peak of their storm surge coming up within the next few hours right now. And then as we zoom in for the 3D look, this is just absolutely incredible images to see. You guys heard a lot about the stadium effect. You can really see clearly here. This one's pretty sharper than it is normally. It almost, to me, it looks like the Roman Colosseum. If you can envision what that looked like before it started falling apart in our lifetimes. But back in their day, that was a very tall and steep structure, perfectly circular. This, to me, almost just looks exactly like the Roman Colosseum almost, the eye of Hurricane Harvey. And then on the outer edges of this 3D scan, you can see those heavy rain bands of the eye wall of Harvey, and you can just see how high into the atmosphere these rain bands reach. We do have a height monitor over here. These things are reaching up to 30 or 40,000 feet. That's where planes are flying, so it's, even if a plane was flying anywhere near her, which we hope they aren't, because that would be a very dangerous thing to do. These are about the levels that planes fly. Just to put that into perspective, all of that water just falling down onto places on the Texas coast. And then if we go forward and look at the velocity images, we see here all of these winds down here. These are the offshore winds, and then all of these, the bright purples, these are the onshore winds. And this is in the northeast quadrant of the storm. That is the strongest part of a typical hurricane. Those are the strongest winds, and those are currently moving onshore just into the Rockport area as we speak right now. And as we zoom in, and we can get some curies on this to see 136 mile per hour winds, 139 mile an hour winds. Those are just unbelievable values. I can't even imagine trying to stand outside in something like that, let alone even trying to drive or do anything. So I hope everyone in that area is inside a sturdy structure and is staying there for the foreseeable future. All of these winds, of course, coming right on shore, pushing all of this water from the Gulf of Mexico into the Texas barrier islands. There's going to be major major beach erosion on those islands and even portions of the Texas mainland as well. And you can really see how clearly the eye is showing up on this velocity scan. You can see we go from those 130 mile an hour winds on either side of it to nothing for a place that has a diameter of just around 20 miles. Just no wind at all being picked up in that eye right now. And just a few miles away from that, you're getting readings up near 135 miles an hour. And then this is the correlation coefficient. This is a slightly complicated thing. I know you've seen it a couple of times already. The red is showing areas where it's very similar in what the radar is hitting, and the blue is showing what is different in what the radar is hitting. So obviously out here, this is all just a lot of rain. There's a lot of water around that eye. That is just a lot of rain. It's all coming down. It's all very similar on the radar, but in the eye, where it's a lot calmer, not really so much water, we do see there those blues, so picking up on those different objects like we've mentioned a few times already. Those are birds seeking shelter from the storm. If they were caught in the eye wall, they wouldn't survive. So they literally get into the eye of the storm and they try to follow it as long as they can just to survive in this situation. It's not just dangerous for humans, it's dangerous for any sort of life that is out in these storms. And then going ahead to our warnings and advisories for Hurricane Harvey, we do see a large stretch of hurricane warnings extending from a little bit north of Brownsville all the way up to just south of Houston. And they also extend pretty far inland as well. So a lot of places will be experiencing hurricane conditions over the next few days. If you notice here, these warnings, they go until Monday at 7:09 p.m. So these warnings go for multiple days. Usually when you get a hurricane warning, it's just for a few hours or maybe 24 hours of impacts at most. But these people have hurricane warnings in effect until Monday. It is currently Friday. So they will be dealing with these conditions for a very long time. And then the tropical storm warnings extend all the way into Houston and even further inland. So a lot of places dealing with some very nasty weather for multiple days, because once the storm does move ashore, which we'll take a look at here with our projected path from the National Hurricane Center, we do see it moves ashore. We did have a question on Facebook from Maddie Pryor asking, once it moves ashore, how much is it going to weaken and how long is it going to stay there? Once it does move ashore, it is going to start to weaken, but it is still going to be, it's going to stall, but it's just a question of where it stalls. If it stalls over the ocean, if it stalls over land, or if it can drift back over the ocean, because if it's over the ocean, it can get replenished and even potentially even re-strengthen a little bit. The longer it spends over land, the better, because it'll weaken more. However, we are expecting by Saturday to be down to a Category 1 hurricane, and then as we do go into later in the day on Saturday, expected to be weakened into a tropical storm. But that's the problem. This storm isn't going anywhere. Once it hits the coast, it's just going to sit there and rain and pour and hit them with these howling winds for 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. So it's just a very terrible situation. As we do take a live look at what's going on right now in Port Arkansas. Well, if we go back to that, there we go. We did lose the weather station here. They're no longer reporting because they experienced a wind gust of 103 miles per hour. And by the looks of it, I say the camera's not working anymore either, because it should be at least beginning to show signs of darkness in the air. So I'm assuming that they lost the camera feed as well. And then going ahead, looking at the rainfall, like I mentioned, the storm is going to stall and it's going to sit there and just rain and rain and rain on the Texas coast. Some of these values are just incredible to see. Even if this was a snowfall map, you would take a step back and be like, wow, that is an absurd amount of snow, but this is rain. They're getting 22 inches of rain in Galveston, 36 inches of rain in Victoria. That is 3 feet. That's a swimming pool falling from the sky on them. 3 feet of rain in these next few days. That is a lot of water that will just have nowhere to go. So all of that water, all the drains are going to be filled. Everybody needs to stay off the roads. And if you do have to drive, which we hope that you don't, if you do see a flooded roadway, please remember the National Weather Service's tagline on this. Please turn around. Don't drown. Do not try to drive through flooded roadways. Do not try to even go outside in these conditions. And then we do have the modeled wind gusts going forward. We do see a lot of places in the 50s, and you even see this little area right there as it comes ashore. This little area right here of weaker winds. That's actually the eye of Harvey, of where it's being anticipated to go. But you do see in the beginning of this loop, there's many places, Corpus Christi in particular, in the beginning of this had multiple loops there of 74. That's the hurricane force wind gusts. and then they're going to be dealing with that for multiple days. So just to wrap it up, with once again the main takeaways: there's states of disaster in 30 Texas counties, and if you do have someone who hasn't found shelter yet, at this point it might be too late to find a shelter. So they might be better off calling 911 and finding help that way. And once again, of course, President Trump is going to be touring the damage sometime early next week. But for now, we're going to go back over to the desk with Andy and Paul.
Thank you, Brian. That's great information. But really, we would hope that people in that area stay safe as this devastating storm is beginning to approach the area. And as we take a look right now, again, I want to emphasize these points. These are the headlines of Hurricane Harvey. They were on the screen there. The main point right there is if you are in need of shelter, text shelter as well as your zip code to 4 FEMA to find shelter, and they will text you back with shelter information and get you what you need to do. And if you're unable to do that, like Brian said, it's time to call 911 and get the help you need, because it's a very life-threatening situation. And a couple other points that Brian also mentioned is state of disaster has been issued in 30 Texas counties, and I would likely suspect, Paul, that number will increase as we go forward in these next couple days.
That's right, as Harvey just sits over the southeastern Texas coast and just dumps up to 3 feet of rain in some spots, could go up from here.
Yep, and that will do it for us here on the Campus Weather Service live broadcast team. Thank you for joining us. Stay safe if you have friends, family, or if you yourself are in the path of this storm. It's going to be a devastating storm, mainly the rainfall and winds as we go forward these next couple days. It's not going to end tonight. The rain will continue for numerous days ahead. So that'll do it here. I'm Andy Moffett.
And I'm Paul Mikolajchuk.
And have a good evening and a safe night.